Hello friends, welcome back to part 15 of this series where we are creating an Instagram clone using FlutterFlow and Supabase. So in the previous video, we learned how to use FlutterFlow's inbuilt simple search action to search our posts. And in this video, I'll be introducing an alternative method using API calls. So what exactly is an API call? In very simple terms, an API call is basically a very simple way for us to reach out to the Supabase servers and get data back from our Supabase database. So in this video, we'll try to create an API call which reaches out to our Supabase database and queries our user data table, searching for users based on a search string that the user enters. So we can go back to our FlutterFlow dashboard over here. And first things first, we want to add a new API call. And we want to create a single API call, not an API group. Over here, we can give our API call a name. For example, search users. And for the method is a get method, since we want to get data from our database and return it here. For the API URL, we'll get to that later. But for the headers, we need to add two headers. So in our FlutterFlow project, we first need to go to API docs over here. So we click on that. Alright, so once loaded, we can go to our user data tables under tables and views over here. So we click on user data. You can see that there's a bunch of stuff over here, but the most important thing to do is that we want to click on bash on this top right hand corner over here. And then for our project API key, we want to set it to anon public. So you just want to scroll down. So once we are here, we can see that there is some -h stuff over here. So -h basically means a header, and that's exactly what we want. So we want to copy from this API key all the way to the end of the double open and close inverted commas. Make sure not to include those. So we want to right click and copy, and we'll paste it in this header over here, Ctrl V. And then we'll do the same for this other authorization bearer header. So we copy this and we paste it in this header over here. And now we have to define our API URL. The API URL is crucial as it is basically the instructions to tell Supabase on what kind of data we want to get back. So for this API URL, we can go to Supabase and we will scroll down all the way to filtering over here. So the filtering option. Then we want to copy the entire API URL from here to here. Don't include the quotation marks. So we copy this and we paste it in our API URL here. So let me just briefly explain what this API URL is. So this first part of our URL is basically unique to each and every one of your own Supabase projects. And this is just sort of like an identifier for your Supabase projects. This over here represents the table that you're trying to get data from. And this short statement over here is basically the condition that you're trying to filter the data based on. In this case is where the ID is equal to 1. And finally, this statement over here basically means that you're selecting all the rows where the ID is equal to 1. So we actually want to get rid of this for now, since this is not the condition that we want. So for our condition, we want to for our condition over here, we want the user to be able to search for the usernames. So we want to check where our username is equal to or very close to what the user searches for in the search bar. But then that begs the question, how can I find what is the right syntax and what are the right words to use to implement that function? So a piece of documentation that I commonly refer to is this one over here, Postgrest. And is this one over here, propose GREST documentation. So we click on that. Then, since we are implementing APIs, we search for API and we search for table and views. Under the right hand column over here, we want to search for read. We select read since we are reading data from our table. And you can see that here we have a bunch of operators, and this will tell us what we need to put inside our API URL over here in order to implement the condition that we're looking for. So for our condition, the operator that we're looking for is the I-like operator over here. So in our API URL, we first need to specify the column that we are trying to compare on. So in our case, this will be the username column. So we have to type in username, then equals I-like dot, and then here we have to put in whatever the user searches. But whatever the user searches is dynamic. So for dynamic values, we can specify it through a variable. So we can click on this variable tab and we can add a new variable. And here we can give the variable a name such as search string. For the type, it will be of type string. And we can also specify a default value. You just specify any default value. I'll just give it a random string for now. And then now in our API URL, to be able to make use of our variable over here, we have to give it square brackets. So open square bracket, then we give the variable name, and then close square bracket. And this is how we can use a variable inside our API URL. And last but not least, we want to add an and sign, and %sign, and then we want to say select equals star. So this select equals star basically means to select all of the columns. Alright, so we can just press on add call, and now we can test our API call by going to this response and test tab. So we can give our search string a value such as axolotl, then we can test our API call. And you can see that it indeed returns to us the role for the axolotl user, which is over here. If we search a part of the name, such as XOL, this is just a part of the username. You can see that unfortunately it does not return the row, which is not what we want actually. And if we go back to call definition, it looks like I forgot to add asterisk signs over here. So remember to add these asterisk signs. Which enclose the search string variable. If we save again, then we go back to response and test, and we test our API call. You can now see that even though it's only a part of this string, is part of this username, it still returns the row over here. However, if you add some random value and we test, you can see that nothing is returned over here. So that's great. Now we have created our API call. But one good practice of defining an API call is to pass it as a data type over here. So we want to toggle this pass as data type option to be true. And if we check for this data type, unfortunately we are unable to select any options since we have not created any custom data types just yet. So first, to create a custom data type, we have to go to this data types option in the menu. And over here, there is a green button to create a data type from a JSON response. So if we click that, you can see that we can create a data type just by inputting the JSON response. So first, let us go back to our API call, response and text, and we'll search for axolotl. Make sure that you have this response over here. Then we will go ahead and copy all of this. So copy all of this. We'll go back to data types and we'll press on this generate data type from JSON response. We'll give our data type a name such as user. Then we'll just add the JSON response here. We can click on create. You can see that it automatically creates the custom data type for us, including all of the relevant fields, such as user ID, creator, username, bio, and as such, which corresponds exactly to all of the columns in our Supabase database. So now that we have our custom data type over here, we can go back to our API call under response and text, and under parse as data type, we can now pass the user over here, and we want to pass it as a list as well, since there's a chance that we may get multiple users. And now we can click on save, and our API call here is done. So now we can go back to our widget tree, and let's see how we can implement this function. So in our search page over here, we are making use of the same search bar actually over here. So we open the action flow editor, and you can see that it's actually already searching for this simple search result. So since we are using the same search bar for two different types of searches, one is to search for posts and the other is to search for users. So we actually have to add a conditional action. And this condition is a single condition. So for the first condition, we can search for our widget state and tab bar current index. So if the tab bar current index is equal to 0, this means that the tab bar is currently on for you. So whenever we search our search bar over here, we want to search for posts. So we can cut this simple search action and we'll paste it over here. If the tab bar current index is not equal to 0, that means the user is currently on the accounts page and want to search for other users. So in our search bar over here, this will be where we can implement our API call. So we can add an action over here, and we can search for API call action. We'll choose this action, and we need to specify our API call, the search users API call that we just created. For the variable, we need to pass our search string variable, and we need to pass the widget state, and we need to pass the value in our text field, the search bar text field. You can see that we have an action output variable as well. You can see that FlutterFlow actually automatically adds a conditional action to check if our API call was successful. And usually for API calls, we actually need to add a page state variable to store this result variable. So I want to go to my search page over here, and I want to click on this state management option. So we want to add a new local page state variable. We can give it a name such as searched users. Oops, this should be a lowercase letter. And for the type over here, you want to select the type data type. So you want to select this data type over here. We want to set it as is list to be true, and for the type we specify our user custom data type. So we can click on confirm. Then now in our search bar, we open the action flow editor again, and if our result was successful, then we want to set our page state variable. So we can search for a state, we can update page state. For this, we want to update our searched users page state variable. For the update type, we want to set the value, and the value that we want to set is our action output variable and our API result. Over here, we have to set it as data type. Then we can click on confirm. We can close out of our action flow editor, and now we want to display the results of our searches inside this column over here. So we click on the column, and now we want to go to generate children from variable. For this, we can give it a variable name of search users. Oops, search users is already in use, so search user rows. Then for the value that we want to specify here, it will simply be our page state searched users list over here. Click on confirm and save. And then now we have to link the data here. So for the circle image, we want to scroll down and we want to change the path to our search user rows item. Select data structure field And here we can access, it looks like there's something wrong over here. So let me just go back to our data type. And the problem seems to lie with this profile pic over here. So let me try adding a new field, profile pic. And I think the type, instead of a string, it should be image path. So, okay, let's delete this field for now. Then we add a new field, profile underscore pic. Then the field type should be image path instead of string. So that is actually one of the problems that you can run into when you're just generating the data type from the JSON response automatically. So if we go back now, and we go back to this user container over here and this circle image, and we try to set the path now. So it'll be under search user row items, data structure field. Now we can select our profile pic field. And we can also show error image on failure. Now for the username, we want to set the text to our search user rows item, data structure field, and for the field, we'll set it to the username here. And lastly, for this display name, let's just set it to search rows user item, data structure field, and let's see, what do we want to set it as? For now, let's just set it as the user ID. Alright, yep, so that should be it. And now let's try testing it in our app in test mode. Alright, so the app has just loaded up, and let's try searching for a new user. So let's search for Axolotl. You can see that after a while, our Axolotl user indeed appears. Let's try searching for our post so that we know that it works still. Yep, this works. And for our API call, we search for XOL. You can see that it does return our Axolotl user. So one thing that you may notice is that for our simple search for our post over here, the search speed is extremely fast. But for our API call, let's say we search for this, it has a much longer lag time. So it's much more recommended to use FlutterFlow's simple search approach compared to using an API call for simple search. So, and one more thing about FlutterFlow's simple search is that if you don't have the word fully correct, such as I just put in maybe Axolotl with 2 O's, it's still able to return, and it's still smart enough to return the post with Axolotl inside of the description. But for this, if I search in Axolotl, it's not smart enough to actually return the Axolotl user. So it's much more recommended to use FlutterFlow's inbuilt simple search action. But for this video, I just wanted to show you how we could implement API calls in FlutterFlow, as well as how to create custom data types so that we are able to access the API call results much more easily. Alright, so that wraps it up for today's video, and in the next video, we'll be seeing how we can implement a post details page, so when the user clicks on one of these posts, he or she will be sent to the post details page, where the user will be able to actually see all the details of the post. Alright, so I hope you're excited for the next video, and I'll see you in the next video.